I never meant to humiliate her, but when she stood in front of everyone, voice trembling with pride, and told the world I tried to buy her love with money, I realized she never really knew me at all. She thought love was about proving independence, about making me look like the villain, the rich guy flaunting wealth to control her. But I wasn't trying to control her. I was trying to marry her. The diamond ring in my pocket? I'd spent 6 months designing it. She used to doodle rings in her journal, sketches no one but me paid attention to. I turned her dreams into gold, wrapped them in velvet, and planned a proposal under her favorite sky lanterns. But when I finally went down on one knee, in front of her friends, her family, and a crowd of strangers at the plaza we met, she didn't cry, she didn't smile. She laughed. Laughed like I was some clown in an expensive suit. "I'm not for sale," she said, her voice echoing against the stone walls. "This ring? This isn't love. This is you trying to own me." My hand, still holding the ring, froze in midair. The silence that followed was heavier than shame. I stood up, slipped the ring back in my pocket, and looked at the girl I once believed would become my wife. She had fire in her eyes, righteous, defiant, untouchable. She thought she won. She thought I would chase her, beg her to understand, fight to prove my intentions. She had no idea what she just lost. I left the plaza that night without another word. 3 weeks later, I gave the same ring to someone else. And the day she saw that ring glowing on another woman's finger, she dropped to her knees in the rain, sobbing, her voice hoarse with regret. But by then, it was already too late. Because I was no longer the man waiting to be understood. I had moved on, or so I thought. My name is Aiden Malik. I'm 32, CEO of a tech firm I built from scratch in a one-bedroom apartment with a flickering bulb and dreams that outgrew my bank balance. People think I'm lucky, that money comes easy to me. But they don't see the all-nighters, the betrayals, the friends who disappeared the moment success started to bloom. They definitely don't see the part of me that still believes in love, in soft mornings and shared playlists, in growing old with someone who knows your worst fears and chooses to stay anyway. I met her, Zoya, 3 years ago on a rainy Tuesday. I was drenched, stuck under a leaky bus shelter with a dying umbrella. She walked in, laughing with her friend, soaked but carefree. Her sandals squeaked against the pavement as she wiped raindrops off her sketchbook. I glanced at one of her drawings. It was a ring, elegant, minimal, with a leaf-like pattern curving along the band. I said it looked like something a princess would wear. She rolled her eyes and told me I had no taste, that rings weren't about royalty, they were about meaning. That was Zoya, fierce, proud. A woman who didn't just speak her truth, she painted it, danced it, lived it. She was a struggling designer, taking odd commissions for wedding stationery and handmade jewelry. She never asked for help, never expected handouts. And maybe that's why I fell for her so hard. Because in a world of people who wanted my money, my time, or my name, she only wanted to matter. We started slow. Coffee dates after her shift, midnight walks. Sometimes she'd crash at my apartment, leaving bits of herself, lip balm on the sink, earrings on the side table, doodles on my whiteboards. She never said she loved me outright, but the way she looked at me when I was lost in code, the way she kissed me like the world might end tomorrow, that was her language. That was her "I love you." Still, she always kept a little distance, especially when money came up. If I paid for something, she'd insist on splitting. When I gifted her a designer bag on her birthday, she returned it with a handwritten note. "Let me earn nice things on my own. Please." I thought I understood her boundaries. I admired them, even. But somewhere along the way, my love started crossing lines she'd never drawn out loud. When my business hit a big milestone, I started planning the proposal. Not because I wanted to trap her in some fairy tale, but because I couldn't imagine building a life without her beside me. I tracked down a custom jeweler, recreated that rainy day sketch from memory, booked a private spot in the plaza where we first met, surrounded by sky lanterns, just like she once said she'd love at her wedding. I didn't see it coming. Not the laughter, not the accusations, not the pain in her voice as she stood there, turning my love into a performance she didn't want to be part of. That day, I learned something brutal. Pride can sometimes wear the same face as fear. And love? Love isn't always enough. It started with whispers. Not hers, others. People she worked with, designers, influencers who suddenly knew my name but never looked me in the eye. At first, I didn't care. I thought maybe Zoya had finally told them about us. Maybe she was proud. Maybe this was her way of saying, "He's mine." But it wasn't that. One night, I went to surprise her after a long board meeting. I was exhausted, but the thought of seeing her, even just for 10 minutes, made the whole day feel lighter. I stopped by her apartment with takeout and those small lotus-shaped candles she liked. She wasn't home. Odd, but fine. I called. No answer. I texted. No reply. I waited outside her building for 30 minutes. Then, from the cab window, I saw her, walking down the sidewalk, laughing with another guy. He wasn't touching her, but the ease between them, the inside jokes, the way her body leaned just slightly toward him, it wasn't nothing. I didn't confront her that night. Instead, I let the silence stretch, watching what she'd do next. And for a while, things returned to normal. Or what felt like normal. Until the night she invited me to her gallery showcase. I stood in a crowd of artsy strangers, sipping wine I couldn't pronounce, admiring her displays, illustrations of love, pain, betrayal. Each piece had a quote scribbled beneath it, some poetic, some razor-sharp. But one piece froze me completely. A charcoal sketch of a man on one knee holding out a ring. The woman in front of him stood tall, hands on hips, face unreadable. The quote beneath read, "You can't buy love, only cowards try." I didn't need to ask. I knew that was about me. I waited until the room thinned out, then walked up to her. "That one's powerful," I said, nodding toward the sketch. "Personal?" She didn't flinch, inspired by a real moment. "Guess I missed the part where I became the villain in your origin story." Her jaw tightened. "It's not about you, Aiden." "It's not?" I chuckled bitterly. "Because from where I'm standing, that's exactly the same pose I made when I proposed to you. Same ring, same rejection, same silence afterward." She looked around, avoided my eyes. "I didn't ask for that proposal," she said finally, voice low. "You ambushed me. You made me feel like I had to say yes or look ungrateful." "You were ungrateful, Zoya," I said, my voice barely above a whisper but filled with something sharp. "You didn't just say no. You humiliated me." Her gaze snapped back to mine. "Because you tried to make me feel small, like I needed your money to be worthy of love." I opened my mouth, but no words came. That night, I walked away, not out of anger, but out of something worse, realization. She didn't trust me, not enough to see my love without weighing it against her pride. And maybe that was the real problem. Not the ring, not the proposal, but the fact that somewhere along the way, she stopped believing I was on her side. For weeks after the gallery night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I missed her, but because I didn't know if I should. My brain kept looping the same reel. Her face when I opened that ring box, the fire in her eyes, the way she turned love into a public lesson. A warning to anyone watching. Don't let a man buy your soul. Was that how she really saw me? A paycheck with a pulse? I kept telling myself she was just overwhelmed. Maybe she felt cornered. Maybe her pride flared up in panic. But then I'd remember the drawing, the quote, the way she stood beside that guy in the street, like she trusted him more than me. I tried to convince myself I was overthinking. But doubt is a disease, quiet but relentless. It creeps into the gaps between moments. It changes the way you hear a voice, the way you remember a smile. It turns love into math. I started noticing everything. The way Zoya's texts became shorter. How good night turned into talk later. How her stories never included me anymore. She still hadn't posted a single photo of us in the 3 years we'd been together. I asked myself, is that her being private? Or ashamed? One night, I drove past her place again. I told myself I was just in the area, but I knew that was a lie. Her window light was on, shadows dancing against the curtain, and parked just outside, the same car I'd seen that other guy driving. My hands clenched the steering wheel. I didn't go up, I didn't call, I just sat there, engine off, trying to breathe through the ache pressing against my chest. A week later, I got a call from my assistant. Aiden, there's someone here asking about the engagement ring you returned to the vault. She says she's Zoya's co-designer. I blinked. Returned? Yeah, the custom one. She says she wants to feature it in their next campaign. I didn't even ask how they knew. I just stared at the office wall, realization settling like ice in my spine. She never saw the ring as a symbol of us. She saw it as aesthetic, a design, a story to feed into her brand. I opened my laptop, went to her design page, and there it was. Front and center. A digital sketch of my ring, captioned as "Inspired by a personal journey of breaking free from materialistic love." I closed the laptop slowly. My hands weren't shaking. My heart wasn't racing, and that scared me more than anything, because it meant I was done hoping, done trying to see the best in her. That weekend, I flew out of the city. No texts, no calls. I needed space. But that's when it happened. 2 days later, I checked my phone to a storm of missed messages. Zoya, can we talk? I messed up. Please don't make decisions without hearing me out. Then one final message, sent at 2:17 a.m. Aiden, you gave that ring to someone else? Is this your revenge? I stared at it for a long time. Revenge? Was it revenge or closure? Maybe they're the same thing, sometimes. Because the truth was, I had met someone else. Not in the romantic way, at least not yet. But she was someone kind, patient, someone who didn't make me question my worth with every step I took toward her. Her name was Alina. She worked in charity finance, quiet, thoughtful, and completely unaware of my status the first time we met. She dropped her groceries in the parking lot, and I helped her. We ended up talking for half an hour. It wasn't love, but it was peace. And for the first time in years, I wasn't walking on emotional glass. I didn't plan on giving Alina the ring, but when I saw her holding it, admiring the details, not knowing its history, something in me felt free. I slipped it on her finger that day, not as a proposal, just as a promise to myself. I would no longer beg someone to value me. I didn't expect her to show up at my office. Not after all the silence, not after turning our love into an art piece meant to shame me. But there she was, standing in the lobby, her hair disheveled like she hadn't slept, clutching something in her hand. My assistant looked panicked. She's been here for over an hour. She said she wouldn't leave until she spoke to you. I sighed and walked out to meet her. Zoya, I said, voice flat. She turned quickly, like she'd been waiting for oxygen. I need to talk to you. I nodded toward the conference room. Once the door closed behind us, I leaned against the table. Say what you came to say. She placed the object in her hand on the table. The ring box? The ring box. Except, this wasn't the copy I'd seen on her website. This was my original. I never sold it, she said softly. I lied. I frowned. What are you talking about? She took a breath, trembling. That day, when you proposed, I panicked. I thought it was all too fast. That you were trying to own me the same way clients tried to own my ideas. I thought, if I accepted the ring, I'd lose myself. And now? I asked, tone sharper than I intended. I realized I lost you anyway, she whispered. For a moment, I stared at the ring, my heart caught somewhere between rage and nostalgia. She stepped closer. I didn't mean to turn you into a villain. That quote under the sketch, it wasn't about you. It was about me. About how I was afraid that loving you meant giving up the independence I worked so hard for. Then why drag me through the mud? I asked, voice rising. You could have just told me the truth. Instead, you built an entire narrative where I was the man who tried to chain you with gold. She flinched. I was wrong. I thought I was protecting myself. I looked her dead in the eyes. I gave the ring to someone else. She froze. Her lips parted, but no sound came. It wasn't a proposal, I added. It was closure, a way to stop associating that ring with shame. Alina didn't know the history. She just admired the craftsmanship. Zoya swallowed hard. Is there something between you two? I shrugged. Maybe, or maybe I'm just tired of giving my heart to someone who keeps looking for reasons to run. She stepped forward, desperate now. I didn't run. I got lost. There's a difference. Then she did something I never thought I'd see. She dropped to her knees, right there in the glass-walled conference room, visible to anyone who walked by. I'm sorry, she choked out. I was so scared of needing you that I never stopped to realize how much I wanted you. I knelt too, not out of romance, but because I didn't want to stand over her. You taught me to fight for myself, she said, tears streaming down. But I never learned how to fight with someone. I want to try, if you'll let me. For a moment, all I heard was the sound of my own breathing, of 3 years of memories, of love that had felt like lightning and lava and everything in between. But then I remembered Alina's calm voice, her steady presence, and I realized Zoya had finally learned how to fight for me. But I had already stopped bleeding. I thought that was the end. That after her apology and my silence, we'd walk away. Two people who once burned for each other but couldn't survive the flames. But Zoya wasn't done. 2 nights later, she showed up at an elite charity gala I was sponsoring, an event Alina had helped organize. I saw her the moment I stepped onto the rooftop terrace. A red silk dress that clung to her like a second skin, her eyes locked on mine across the glittering crowd. My heart dropped. Not because she looked stunning, but because I suddenly realized what she was about to do. She walked straight up to me, ignoring Alina beside me, and without a word, held out the ring box. Again. This time, in front of hundreds of guests and media flashes. Aiden Khan, she said clearly, I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking you to remember who we were before we both let ego get in the way. A hush fell over the room. Alina tensed beside me. Her hand slowly slipped from mine. I stared at Zoya. Bold, brilliant, unapologetically dramatic. Just like the day she walked into my life. But instead of feeling drawn in, I felt nothing but heaviness. I'm sorry, I said quietly, but this isn't your stage anymore. Her smile faltered. I'm not the man who needed to be chosen in front of the world. I'm the man who needed to be believed in when no one was watching. People around us tried to pretend they weren't listening. Cameras clicked anyway. Zoya's eyes watered, but she held her chin high. So, this is it? After everything? You gave me a masterpiece, Zoya, I said, voice steady. A love that changed me. But you also painted over it with pride and assumptions. I was willing to be your partner, not your villain. Alina took my hand again. Zoya saw it. And that's when she said it. Words that sliced through the air, sharper than anything she'd ever drawn or spoken before. You replaced me with a safer version of me. Someone who doesn't challenge you. The crowd gasped softly. My jaw tightened. You think she's a downgrade? I replied. But Alina doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. She listens. She chooses peace over pride. That's the kind of strength I need now. Zoya stepped back, like the wind had been knocked from her. A reporter snapped a photo. The ring box slipped from her hand. I watched it fall. Not just the ring, but the last weight I carried from her. And for the first time in years, I felt light. After that night, the tabloids had a field day. Fashion Queen's public plea rejected by billionaire X. Designer Zoya begs for forgiveness, but it's too late. The photo of the ring falling mid-air became a symbol. Some turned it into memes. Others wrote think pieces about pride, love, ego, and how public apologies don't erase private damage. But I didn't read most of it. I was done living in everyone else's lens. Zoya disappeared from the spotlight for a while after that. She closed her art studio's Instagram, canceled a few launches. I heard from a mutual friend that she took time off, traveled to Italy, and started sketching again. This time, not for branding, for herself, and I respected that. Pain, if you let it, becomes evolution. As for me, I didn't jump into a relationship with Alina. That wouldn't have been fair, to her or to myself. But we did spend more time together. Not as rebound comfort, not as a love story in waiting. Just as two people who found ease in each other's silence. She was the kind of person who never needed the room to look at her to feel important. And slowly, I learned to do the same. I remember sitting on a bench with her once, months later, as the autumn leaves fell around us. She turned to me, sipped her tea, and said, "You know, you never really talk about her anymore." I paused. It's not that I don't think about her. I just no longer live there. She nodded, offering a gentle smile. Good. And just like that, I knew I was finally free. Not angry, not bitter, just done. One evening, I did receive a letter. Handwritten. No return address, but I knew the handwriting by heart. Aiden, I used to think I lost you the moment I said no to that ring. But I now realize I lost you long before that. When I stopped listening. When I started seeing your kindness as control. Your gifts as chains. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I've grown more in your absence than I ever did in your presence, because I finally had to face the parts of myself I blamed you for. You were never the villain, Aiden. I was just afraid to love someone who made me feel safe. Thank you for trying. Thank you for letting go when I couldn't. Zoya, I sat with that letter for a long time, not crying, not smiling, just grateful. Because love, even when it breaks, leaves behind lessons. And those lessons can either become walls or windows. Zoya had finally opened her window. As for me, I wasn't searching for new love. I was building a new life. Simpler, kinder, quieter. And on a rainy Sunday, years after I first met her, I stood outside a small jewelry store with Alina, watching her pick out a delicate necklace for her niece. She turned to me, laughing. What? I shook my head. Nothing, just glad you're here. She smiled. Me too. And as we stepped inside, I glanced at the shelves of rings behind the counter. For the first time in a long time, they didn't remind me of shame. They reminded me of choice, of peace, of the truth I had to learn the hard way. Sometimes, giving the ring to someone else isn't revenge, it's redemption.